I was disappointed with myself because the second that I got back to my office, I realized okay, this could probably be done in one line. I already posted it on Piazza, but just to share this with you. So once we've loaded that game data, right? Remember that we were trying to produce this report of given a game, how many platforms it's available on, given publishers, how many games have they published, and the first thing I forgot was that this, remember that you can, the way that we did it originally was by splitting out these tokens and then passing that into this constructor up here by going tokens of 0, tokens of 1. I knew that there was a shortcut way of doing that, and it was just the single star instead of the double star. Double stars are for unpacking dictionaries. Single stars are for unpacking sets and lists, all right? And so instead of having to write all of this out, here's a nice little shortcut that you can use in Python. But otherwise, I broke this down into 3 lines and then combined it all in just one line here. But basically what you needed to get from publishers to the number of games that they've produced is, first of all, you need a unique set of publishers. Now, what we were using on Friday, whatever it was that we were creating a list and then we were surrounding that with a set. I neglected to remember that you can actually do that directly. The curly brackets generally are for dictionaries, but they can, but that's only if you provide a key value pair, key colon value or key comma value or something like that. If you just have single values here, then it interprets it as a set, just like you would in discrete math. If you were to write a set A is equal to, you would use curly brackets for that as well. Right? Otherwise, what this does is a set comprehension. I want all publishers for G in games, having loaded that up from the file, if it's a non-empty string. Right? If it's an empty string, or if it's none, or something like that, or if it's, I believe, if it's just a string of white space, then it's not going to have a true value. It's going to have a falsy value. We call that truthy falsy because it's not really a Boolean value like true false or A is greater than B. It has a conventional truth value or false value based on the language. But once I've got a unique list of set of publishers here, then I can map that to a set of games to ensure the uniqueness and valid title. And to do that, I'm using a dictionary comprehension here. Let's read that left to right. So it's all P is going to map to this thing right here, which is another sub-nested list comprehension, or set comprehension in this case. All titles for G in games if their title and if it is non-empty, so this is a non-empty string right here, that's what I'm testing, and G.publisher is equal to P, in other words, the key. So if they're Atari, then put them into the set associated with Atari. If they are Blizzard, put them into the set associated with Blizzard. Right? And let's see, let's zoom out a little bit. That's zoomed in too far. There we go. For P in publishers. And here I'm referencing this set up here. Then what I do is I project that down. I don't want the set, I want the size of the set. So to do that, all I'm doing is another dictionary comprehension here, where I'm mapping the publisher to the length of games for P, comma, games in publishers to games.items. In other words, I'm using this previously created set here. It's going to be publisher mapping to their set of games, right? Those are the items. And then all I want is the size of that set, length of that set. Right? That gives me the report that I want. Well, yeah, we can run it here. Python game report. There we go. And there's the original report. Right? So where is it? All the way up here. Atari was 0, Blizzard Entertainment 0, Capcom 3, LucasArts has those 3 games. Lego Star Wars and TIE Fighter and TIE Fighter versus X-Wing or whatever they were. Right? But I am getting reports now with 0, with 1. They're all correct. Right? If you wanted to print this out in another way, great. Otherwise, it's already sorting for us automatically. I did that all in one line by simply just taking, instead of saving these off into variables, what I did is I put them into as a sub comprehension on this thing. But you can see that it gets really unwieldy really quick, right? In fact, I didn't even do it for all this. The full line that I published on Piazza would have looked something like this. There. So you've got a set within a set within a set. Let me ask you, does that look comprehensible? Not comprehensive as in it covers everything, but comprehensible as in it's easy to understand. How many people would raise, assume that you have 5 years of Python experience at this point. Immediately raise your hand and said, yes, I know what this is doing. Probably not. So list comprehensions are the way to go if you've got something simple to do. For example, I did the assignment. I had not done a Python solution yet, but I did the assignment, and spoiler alert, I was able to do it in 7 lines of code, and that was it, right? For the weather data. So if you're doing a dictionary, and it was not too complicated, like it was not nearly as complicated as this one was. Right? So if you're looking for a short, first of all, go for something that actually works and runs. But if you're looking for a shortcut, try to figure it out with a dictionary comprehension, list comprehension, set comprehension on your assignments. Right? Otherwise, I did it also. I didn't post this one, but I did the same exercise, but mapping games to the number of platforms that they were on. All I had to do was change the variable names. Instead of publishers, we're getting all unique game titles if that game title's not empty. Platform counts, same thing here. And then platform counts, I go to one big super line. Right? All right, questions on that? Otherwise, and I'm crossing my fingers here, with the remaining 40 minutes, let's do another exercise. Right? This one was from a final from 2 years ago. Yeah, fall 21. So here, this was before he was let go last year, late last year. Scott Frost was quoted in 1997, if you know anything about Nebraska football history here. What happened in 1997? Yeah, there was a controversy. This predates the playoff system. So there was controversy because there were 2 number 1 teams. Who was national champion? They didn't play each other. And so Scott Frost was asked about that as the quarterback at the time. If you can look at yourself in the mirror and say your job depended on playing either Michigan or Nebraska to keep your job, who would you rather play? He's saying Nebraska would beat Michigan hands down, right? Probably right, at the time at least. Certainly not true at all anymore. But at the time, he was definitely right. So the problem that I came up with is, let's test to see if Scott Frost is right. Let's have an actual ranking system, right? Because the way that it worked was that they just asked the coaches or the AP, right? And whoever voted for and Michigan won it, right? Who won won the AP poll, one won the coaches poll. I forget which one it was. But anyway, what I want to do is I want to come up with a true ranking system. First of all, the priority here will, of course, be win percentage. Nebraska went 11-0 right, in the regular season. Michigan went 11-0 as well. So they were the 2 top teams. But I also want to look at the point difference. In other words, if you look at all those games, Nebraska scored 329 more points than were scored against them. This is the point difference. So if you score 600 points, but 300 points are scored against you, what's the difference? 600 minus 300. So it's the point difference is 300. And clearly, based on that, Scott Frost was right. Right? All of our games, we won them more hands down than Michigan won all their games, if you want to look at it that way. Right? Now, this was just a fun way of introducing maps, data processing, whatever. What I've got here is a CSV file representing all the teams. There are 148 teams. Each team is identified with a unique code. This is called a UUID, Universally Unique Identifier. It's cryptographically generated based on some randomness and also some hash functions. So basically what you have is a property where any 2 computers at any time in history going forward for 1,000 years, it is extremely infinitesimally unlikely that they will generate the same exact UUID. Right? So it's a nice way of and you can bring libraries and like generate UUID online, right? If you ran this a tool on your computer and I ran it on mine, then there's an ID right there generated. Generate another one. Generate another one. Generate another one. Right? Any two people doing this clicking this button for 1,000 years, the likelihood that they will get a duplicate either among themselves or between each other is like 1 divided by 10 to the power 30 or something. In other words, it's extremely unlikely, right? So that's how I generated these unique identifiers. They are clearly strings because they're hexadecimal, right? Then I've got the name of the team, right? So I'm associated each team here. For example, Nebraska is what? There's Nebraska, and there's our unique identifier. Over here in the games.csv file, I have results of 642 regular season games. The first one is the away team. That's that UUID in that other file. That's their score, 6. There's a UUID of the home team. They scored 42. So for example, let's look up a Nebraska game here. If I looked up, let's find there, the game. So clearly Nebraska was the home team. At home, they scored 29 points and they shut out somebody. I wonder who that somebody was. Let's go ahead and cut and paste that and search for it over here. Texas Tech. So we oh wow. Much different world in 1997, by the way. But we shut out Texas Tech, right? 29-0. Now, I could, of course, compile this report by simply going back and forth, all by hand. But we need to write a program that will load up this data, make all the associations, count up the number of wins, count up the number of losses, determine what the point differential is for each team, and then produce this report that sorts them, best team to worst team, according to that criteria that I just totally made up. Right? Nowadays, FBS, right? FBS, is it? Football bowl system or whatever. They have a much more complicated formula that brings in, strength of schedule, a bunch of other factors. This is just keep it simple and show that Nebraska should have been the sole national champions. Right? All right, so this was done in C using structures. Over here in Python, how should we start out? Let me go ahead and go with just report here. Okay. You're probably going to want a way to represent teams, right? Come on, why are you find there? Get rid of that. So I want a class team, right? Is that how you do it? I believe so, right? And what is a team going to have? So let's go ahead and create a constructor. Remember, how do I do that? What's that function called? Init, initialization, and we'll have self. When we load that up from the file, of course, we're going to want just the team name, right? Because the actual wins, losses, the actual number of points, that's stored in a completely different file in the games.csv file. So let's just worry about loading up all of the teams to begin with, right? So self.name is equal to name, right? Team name. I don't call it team name like this. Why? Because it's implicit. It's the name of the team, right? And def, let's just go ahead and go with a string representation immediately, self, right? And we'll go ahead and return self.name, right? So just so that we can, debug and do some ad hoc debugging where did I load up that CSV file correctly, all right? So let's load up the teams file first. 145 teams here. By the way, there are more teams than that, but whether or not they played a Division I team, I excluded them. In fact, you'll find here that there are some no-name teams, like Wake Forest. Are they a D1 team? They're Division I, but they're not a Power 5, right? No football fans. All right, never mind. Illinois certainly is there, but Nichols State? Probably not. I don't know, is Omaha here? That's a good question. Nope. Omaha no longer has a team. They used to have a team in 1993. but they got rid of their team in favor of hockey, which is doing pretty well right now, by the way. All right. So, ideas on how to load this data up. Def, load teams, right? I'm probably going to do something very similar to what we did with game report. Let's just steal that code, but remind ourselves of what it looks like, right? And by walking through it and changing it, right? So first of all, I'm going to open up that file, and it's going to be the teams.csv file. I'm going to read all the lines just in one shot, get it all out of the way. Then I'm going to close it. Be careful though. Is the first line an actual value? Nope. That was done for the C folks so that you wouldn't have to predict or say, is this an empty line or not? Keep processing. So we're going to want to ignore that first line, by the way. Right? Game report. Let's get rid of that. Right? All right. Now, for each line, for line and line, here's teams. Right? Relabel it. For each line, I will strip out any white space, split it along commas, and then do the same trick here. The team is going to be a new team with all those tokens. And then teams.append t and be done with it. Right? Very, very similar. Except that, what did I forget? Remember what's on that first line? Is that a valid team? Nope. Let's see what happens when I try to do this. So teams is equal to load teams. There we go. And pprint.pprint teams. We'll just pretty print this by bringing in the import pprint library. Oops. Oh, good. I'm not in the habit of always doing a semicolon. All right. See football. Python report. There we go. What's wrong? Oh, did I call? What's wrong? Team tokens. But 3 were given. Oh, do I have 3? No. Oh, it's okay. So it's airing out. This is what happens when I don't ignore that first line. Thoughts on how to ignore that first line? So do you remember that syntax I showed you to get a substring? If I've got, say, a string, right, is equal to hello. What if I just wanted a substring started at index 3? Right? Foo is equal to str starting at 3 and then, or 3 going all the way to the end. It also works for lists. Ignore the first line. How do I do that? By starting at index 1 and then going through every other line. Right? Let's see if that works. Oh, come on, still. Init takes 2 positional arguments. No, it doesn't. Itself, name, should be, duh. We do have 2 arguments, don't we? We have the UUID and then the team name. So do we want to store the UUID here? We could. Self.uuid is equal to UUID. There we go. Sorry. There. And we're not getting a nicely printed out version of this, so S is equal to str of T for T in teams. There we go. And then we'll print out S instead. There. So all the way to the top, however many teams there were, North Carolina State, Wake Forest, Tulane. That looks like it to me. Okay. Now, before we move on, is there another way that the teams could be represented? For example, over here in the teams.or in the games.csv file, am I going to have their name? Nope. Instead, I'm going to have their UUID, right? So maybe I could store this in a way that if I had their UUID, I could look up the object that represents that team so that I could increment or decrement, wins or losses, points or whatever, right? What's another way that I could represent this then? Instead of just a list of teams, right? What could I do? All right, a dictionary. What would you want to map from, and what would you want to map to? Key to value. What do you want as your key? Do you want the team name? Is that going to help you when you process this file? Nope. Probably want the UUID. Is going to map to the team object. Right. So let's do that. I could, of course, change this entire line here, or I could use a dictionary comprehension, right? So team map, I refuse to call it a dictionary, all right, is going to be the UUID, or like team.uuid, t.uuid, is going to map to the t.name, or t, for t in teams. And then return the, not the teams, but the team map there. Now let's print out teams. You see that? All of the UUIDs now map to this object over here, right? And again, if you want to, you can go ahead and, while you're debugging, you shouldn't do this in practice, but you can go ahead and go represent instead, just to see what it looks like. Come on. There we go. So where's Nebraska? Find Nebraska. There's Nebraska. There's our UUID, and it maps to us, the Nebraska team, right? Okay. Well, I've loaded up those teams. I'm reasonably sure that that's correct. I'll go ahead and comment that out because I might want to come back and debug. Certainly that should not be in your last and final submission. Okay. Now what do I do? Let's open up that other file. Come on. There we go. What is it? Games.csv. I'll read all the lines. I'll immediately close the file. And then I'll iterate over each line. Let's outline this first, right? This is, we're going to have guest speakers. Hopefully we'll have guest speakers next week that'll come in and talk about technical writing with me. And one of the things that you do in, one of the things that you do in writing, creative writing, technical writing, or actually writing programs is you draft things, right? You outline things. You revise things. Exact same things that you do when you're writing an essay, you do with code. Let's outline this. For each game, ... for, in other words, each line. One, find the team, find the home team, excuse me, away team. Find the home team. Comment that, there we go. So 1A, 1B, find the home team, right? And then 2, increment win, loss based on score. Right? Also make sure to increment points against 4 based on score. Right? That's how I'm going to process that file. So now let's come in and write each one of these lines of code. So iterating over each line for line in lines, ignoring the first one, 1 colon all the way to the end. Let's also make sure that there's no end line here. Yep, that's good, and that's good once I do that, right? For each one of those lines, I need to first process it, of course, right? So 0 process. And by the way I'm going to do that is by splitting it. It's a CSV file. Come on. There we go. So I've got 4 tokens, right? The first one, tokens sub 0, is the away team's UUID. Tokens sub 1 is the away's score. Tokens sub 2 is the home team's UUID. And tokens sub 3 is the home's score. That's not actually, code, right? But it's me outlining it and drafting it, right? So let's grab all those things. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and find the away team and the home team immediately simply by using those UUIDs. Because I stored it in that team map, I called it teams. Teams sub tokens sub 0, that's going to be the away team. Away team is equal to. Home team is going to be teams sub tokens sub 1. Or not 1, but 2. Right? If you want to interleave these things, away score is equal to tokens sub 1. Except that, is that a number? Not as it is right now. How do I convert that into a number? Int. Why not float? There's no such thing as a half point in football, right? Are there any sports with a half? Any mainstream sports, I should say. Major sports, right? All right, there. I found the away team. I found the home team. Done. Again, as I'm going and outlining this stuff, I would get rid of my outline. Or after I've debugged it and tested it and troubleshot it, then I would remove that stuff. All right, increment win-loss based on score. How do I know who won? If the away score is greater than the home score, then who won? The away team. Away team dot wins plus plus, and away team dot points plus equals the away score. Right? Okay. What do I do with respect to the home team? We're going to fix a couple of things here, but let's get the concept out on a piece of paper first. In fact, that's another technique that we'll talk about when they come. How do you, writer's block, right? People often when they start writing code, they get stuck, right? And they just don't write anything, right? One way of getting past that is what's called free writing, right? Just start writing something, right? And once the juices start flowing, then it clicks, right? Yeah, you might be writing crap, but at least you're writing, right? You get past that writer's block, right? So yes, this is wrong. I'll fix it later, but you get the idea. What happens to the home team? Their losses go up, right? They don't get a win, they get a loss. And the home team dot points plus equals home score. Okay? So if the away team won, then they get a win, the home team gets a loss. But no matter what, however many points they scored, it increases. What else are we not thinking about here? Remember that this is points for, and this is points for. What about against? Away team dot points against plus equals the home score. Right? If the home team scored 5 points against the away team, then points against, you'd increment that by that amount. And then the home team dot points against plus equals away score. Right? Now, I said that we would come back and fix this. Can you do plus plus in Python? Nope. Plus equals 1 and plus equals 1. Okay? What's the other possibility here? Oh, by the way, can you tie? You can tie and then go to overtime, but can you tie? In NCAA? Regular season? I don't think you... Maybe. You can definitely tie in NFL. It's very, very rare, but you can tie in baseball. The only way that you tie in baseball, though, is by ending the game on a tie, intending to schedule it for later, and then not doing it, and then they just declare it a tie because nobody wants to do it. Right? All right. So, but there were no ties. All right. Otherwise, what happens here? Let me make a note of it. The home team wins. Right? So, losses and wins are flipped. Right? The home team wins, the away team loses. What about points for and points against? Points for and points against? It's the same. Should I have repeated code here and here? DRY, don't repeat yourself. If that happens no matter what, move it out. And there we go. There we go. And there we go. And there we go. And now I don't need it up here either. There. The only thing that the score affects is who won and who lost. The points for and the points against are all the same. Okay? All right. Cool. Increment points based on a score. That's it. Right? Let's try to get a better report out of this now. Let's try to get a report that looks something like this. A string method, a two-string method that will end up printing out their name, the wins, losses, percentage, win percentage and loss, and then the point difference. Come on. All right, that's why PDF sucks. All right. You can never highlight anything properly. So to do that, I'm going to come back up here, and I'm going to change, let's do it this way. I'm going to change the formatting of this output. And I'm going to do that using a formatted string. Self.name, right? And then tab over or something like that. Self.wins to self.loss. And then what else do we want? The win percentage there. So maybe I'll calculate that up here. Win percentage is equal to, how do you calculate a win percentage? Self.wins divided by self.wins plus self.loss. Right, there we go. Do I have to worry about integer truncation here? Like I do in C and Java? Nope. It automatically is converted into a floating point number for me. And so I'll put that into parentheses here. Win percentage, there we go. But I only want the 2 decimals of accuracy, floating point number. And what else do we want after that? The point differential, right? So point diff is going to be self dot points for minus self dot points against. And that's my point differential. Let's see what this looks like by printing everybody out in one big line. So and I'm going to do something really hackish here. Instead of repeating the code, I'm going to go ahead and just say self, str self. There we go. So what that's going to end up doing is it's going to end up calling the toString method for this representation up here, but I actually don't need it if I do this correct. For, what is it going to be? Team, or UUID, mapping to team in, what is it? Teams dot items. There we go. I will print the team. There we go. Let's see what this look gives us. Oops, nope, it's comma. Sorry. Oh, okay, good. We've got our first bug here. Team object has no attribute loss. How can you increment something that doesn't exist? So remember that Python is what's called duck typed, right? So remember the saying that I gave to you? How do you know that something is a duck? If I hold something in my hand, how do you know it's a duck? Looks like a duck, talks like a duck. It waddles, it quacks, it must be a duck, right? Well, I want a team to have wins and losses and points for and points against. Down here, I can just go ahead and add that if I want to. Or what I could do is I could do that in the constructor, right? It's not a team if it doesn't have wins. It's not a team if it doesn't have points for. So self.wins, I'll initialize that to 0. Self.loss is equal to 0. Self.points for is equal to 0. And self.points against is equal to 0. Now that those exist, when I try to increment it, it should work. Or at least it'll give me a different error message instead. There we go. All right, let's try to find Nebraska. There we go. 11-0. They had a 100% win percentage, and their point differential was 329. That looks right to me. Let's look for somebody else here. K-State. 10-1 and 224. Fine. Kansas State. 10-1, 224. Looks like it's okay to me. So I've got all of my ducks in a row here. If you want to, you can go back and get it to look really, really pretty, right? Self.name, I don't know, 20s. There we go. Hey, That formats the name in a nice column like that. If you want to, you can format the wins as an integer using 2 columns, and the losses as an integer forming 2 columns. That will align all of the win percentages as well, with some extra white space in there. Right? If you want more precision, I think that this goes out to 3 decimal places. You can do that, 3 decimal places. And then if you want to format the point differential as well, I don't know, 5D, so that it's all aligned. Oops. Point diff. Come on, what's wrong?
You put TF instead of 3F.
Oh, thank you. All right, there. Now it's a nice looking report, right? Man, all those columns line up, except for Virginia Military Institute screws up our, let's go ahead and go with, I don't know, 35. There we go. There, Virginia Military Institute is now taken care of. Has anybody heard of the Virginia Military Institute's football team? All right. So, we need to produce this. We produced a report, but is it in order? Nope, it's in the order that was in the CSV file, which I intentionally randomized. Now what we need to do is we need to make this totally orderable so that we can sort it. If I were to just do this blindly, right, and sort them beforehand, sort teams, there we go, what would it end up looking like? Right? Sort is not, did you mean sorted? Yes, I did. Right. Oh, and then teams.sort, sorry. It's a dictionary. Can you sort dictionaries? Let's find out. All right. It has no attribute name to sort. So maybe dump it. So dump. Now that we're done processing the data, dump the teams to a list in order to sort it. To do that, all I need to do is go teams is equal to T for UUID team T in teams dot items. There we go. Change it into a list for T in teams. Ooh, I don't know what that's doing. Print T. Okay. Quit. Exit. Kill it. Oh no. Okay, there we go. I launched something. Probably a debugger accidentally. There we go. So there it is. Now I can actually sort it. Teams.sort. Except that, what's its order going to be? It's a user-defined type. Can you sort? Does it know how to sort teams? There are lots of ways that you could sort teams. You could sort them by name. You could sort them by win percentage. You could sort them by point differential. You could sort them in 50 different ways, right? I don't want. So how do I go about defining how do you sort this thing? I don't have my notes with me, but do you remember the library we used? I'm going to have to look it up. Python total ordering. And how it worked? Okay, I don't want this. I want func tools total ordering. Python func tools total ordering. I will steal that line of code though because I need to bring it in. Oops. There we go. Remember that we annotate this with a total order. What does it look like? I don't want that. I want this. Find total ordering. There we go. There's the total ordering. Annotate the class with this total ordering. And now what you need to do is you need to define at least 2 functions. The functions that we'll define are less than and then equals. And for that, all I'm going to do is steal their code right here, right? Equals and less than. And come over here. There we go. Let's do equals first. So 2 teams are equal if what? Again, what's the ordering here? We look at their win percentage. Right? Based on their win percentage, if they have the same win percentage, then how do we want to differentiate them? The point differential. Right? So let's do that. Self and other. So let's go ahead and compute the win percentage of one of both of them, and then the point differential of the other. So self point diff is equal to self dot, not point diff, let's go win percentage, self dot wins divided by self dot wins plus self dot loss. Right. We'll do the same thing for other. Other win percentage would be others dot win, others dot win, others dot loss. Right. Now I'm actually wishing that I had actually made a function to do this, right, because it would have made my life easier. You can always go back and fix it, but not with only 10 minutes left. And then I'll do the same thing for self point diff is equal to self dot points for minus self dot points against. Right? And then other point diff, other, and copy other and other. And now, get rid of that, that's just boilerplate stuff. Just compare these two values, the difference between these two values. And that's going to be self win percentage and other win percentage, self point diff, and other point diff. Is that correct? There we go. That's for equality. What does less than look like? Exact same thing, except that instead of equals equals, I use less than. And I need to rename this less than. Right. So, repeated code here, repeated code here. What should I have done? Put these into functions so that you can reuse them. Right. And let's see, Python report. There we go. All right, Nebraska's at the very bottom with 329. Michigan's at the, or Nebraska's the worst team. All right, so my ordering is wrong, right? It's in reversed order. How could I solve that? I could solve that by coming up here and changing less than to what? Greater than. All right, and that would work. There, Rutgers was the worst team, right? That was at the end, right? Illinois, Northern Illinois, and then Rutgers. What's another way that I could have done it? When I sort it down here, I could pass in reversed is equal to true, right? And then that would have solved it as well. Oh, reversed. What is that? How you do it? Reverse. There we go. There. That would have solved it as well. I could have changed the logic in my less than. So there are lots of ways that I could have done it. But otherwise, there's the report. Except that, who is the top team? Where is it? All right, clear this all out. All right, I'll go all the way to the top here. Nebraska, Michigan. Who's number 3, though? Youngstown State? All right, is that a Power 5 team? Back in 1997? No, right? It's not in this report. Why? Because if you also read the instructions here, it says that you have to have at least 6 games or something like that. What is it? Played 10 or more games there. It is, I mean, every year, a Power 5 conference team like Nebraska will play 2 or 3 teams that are out of their guaranteed wins. Why? Why do they play that stuff? First of all, well, they want to ramp it up and they want some free wins, right? From Nebraska's perspective. But from the underdog's perspective, they get money for it. We pay them, right? In fact, we missed that game a couple years ago due to COVID, and they sued us, and we made it right by still paying them even though we didn't have the game. Right? Who is that? Do you remember? Okay. Anyway, there was a kerfuffle as to whether or not we should just pay them or whether or not we should. All right, we'll play you in the years to come or something like that and make it up to you. I forget what we did. But anyway, what I want to do, I've dumped it to a list in order to sort the teams. But how could I filter that list at the same time so that I only get teams with 10 or more actual games? If T dot wins plus t dot loss is greater than or equal to 10. I can embed that right into my list comprehension. When I do that, do I get Youngstown State anymore? Hopefully not. Come on. There. Nebraska, Michigan, Florida State, Kansas State, Washington State, dot, dot, dot. Right. Now I'm only getting teams that were actually in a Power 5 conference, according to this data set. Right. So lots of really convenient things here, right? List comprehensions, dictionary comprehensions. For your first draft, if you just straight up wrote a for loop, right, a while loop or something like that, that's fine. If that's your final submission, that's also fine. But if you are going to be doing Python or Python stuff going forward in your life, you need to do it the Pythonic way. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. When doing stuff in Python, do as the Pythoners do, right? And that means using list comprehensions, dictionary comprehensions, and one-liners where appropriate, right? The video game report here, I ended up having to do 3 lines. I mean, I could do it in one big giant line, right? But then it becomes the list comprehension becomes incomprehensible. But if you split it up into a few lines, it becomes comprehensible again, right? And as I said, your weather data, I implemented that on Friday because I was bored in Python. I did not have a Python solution yet. And I think that the file processing was 5 lines of code. The actual reports were literally 3 lines of code because I used a dictionary comprehension. Right? Now, bragging about low number of lines of code, that should not be something that you strive for, but it is something that I want to illustrate that these seemingly complex problems can actually be boiled down to syntactical, cheats, shortcuts like this. I emphasize that in this course here because when we get to SQL, it'll look super, super familiar. SQL syntax is very, very much like Python declarative syntax like this. Later on, when we actually query something out of a database, what we'll have is something like select first name, comma, last name from user, where user u, we'll even give it an alias, just like Python does, where u dot nuid is equal to this, right? Something like this. And there are semicolons in SQL. So it's going to look something very, very familiar if you're used to Python or if you've liked the syntax that we've done up to this point. I didn't think that we would get it done in 40 minutes, but we did. Cool. All right. Any questions? Again, we got it done because we were using shortcuts, list comprehensions, dictionary comprehensions. Right?
So for doing stuff like with the weather report where it's really reading in millions of lines of data, does it make sense to use lines equal to lines, or does it make more sense to go through and only reading one line and process the line at a time so you don't overload the buffer?
Your mileage will vary. I have not actually tested my solution on the server, but I can't imagine that that this would be a problem. These 3 lines of code for just loading it up, that should be fine. Right? If there is a buffer under the hood, then it's automated and it'll take care of it for you. It'll just buffer, and then continue reading buffer into memory or whatever. Yeah, I just go with this. Because like I said, once you get past loading up the data is the hardest part, right? Writing it, I think it took me like 5 minutes to, not 5 minutes, it took me like 1 minute to write both dictionary comprehensions to filter the data, and I was done. Other questions? Okay. We'll pivot on Wednesday then, instead of continuing to do exercises in Python here. We'll pivot to object-oriented programming in Java. We could repeat this as a motivator for doing some OOP in Java. Otherwise, we'll do the classic load up book data and report the best book. or something.